In a world where politics and power knew no bounds, the 2024 presidential election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden was like no other. The country was gripped by an unshakable sense of dread. Something was wrong. The air felt thick, the skies were perpetually dark, and whispers of a cursed election ran wild. The night of the final debate arrived. As Trump and Biden took the stage, something sinister stirred beneath their feet. The ground rumbled, and a cold wind swept through the arena, causing the audience to shiver. Neither candidate seemed to notice. Their faces were pale, eyes dull, as though they were mere puppets controlled by some unseen force. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the crowd gasped. In the darkness, a deep guttural laugh echoed throughout the hall. When the lights returned, both men were no longer themselves. Trump's once orange skin had turned ashen, his eyes hollow and sunken. Biden, too, had transformed. His figure was gaunt, his grin unnaturally wide, revealing sharp, decaying teeth. They no longer spoke of policies or promises. Their words were now incantations, ancient and malevolent. The crowd was paralyzed with fear as the debate turned into a ritual, summoning something far worse than political division, something demonic. Suddenly, the stage split open, revealing a glowing pit of fire. From the depths, twisted, nightmarish creatures emerged, clawing their way to the surface. The candidates laughed maniacally, their human forms melting away, revealing grotesque, shadowy figures. The audience tried to flee, but the doors were sealed. They were trapped, forced to witness the birth of a new dark reign. As the creatures descended upon the people, devouring their screams, the last vestige of hope was snuffed out. Trump and Biden, no longer men but harbingers of terror, ruled over the chaos, their laughter echoing into the night, marking the end of the world as we knew it. As the creatures feasted on the terror of the audience, the once grand debate hall became a twisted labyrinth of horror. The walls were now pulsating with a sickly, fleshy texture, oozing with dark, tar-like blood. The lights, flickering with an eerie green glow, revealed glimpses of monstrous silhouettes lurking in the corners, watching, waiting for their turn to strike. In the center of the stage, Trump and Biden had fully transformed into eldritch horrors, their grotesque forms towering over the hall. Trump's body was covered in scales, his arms extending into long, jagged claws that dripped with black venom. His voice, no longer human, growled with the force of 1,000 tormented souls. Biden, now a skeletal figure draped in tattered robes, had eyes that glowed with a piercing red light. His words hissed like venomous whispers, each one sending chills down the spines of those who could still hear them. A small group of survivors huddled together in the far corner of the hall realized that the debate was no longer about political power, but the very survival of humanity. They whispered among themselves, trying to formulate a plan to escape the nightmare. Among them was a young woman named Sarah, a journalist who had covered countless political events but had never imagined this. "We can't just sit here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If we stay, we die. We have to find a way out." Another survivor, an older man who had been a political advisor for decades, shook his head. "There's no escape. This is beyond anything we've ever seen. They're not just men anymore. They're something else." But Sarah refused to accept defeat. She glanced at the stage, where the horrors of Trump and Biden were locked in a monstrous battle of their own. Their twisted forms clashed with unimaginable power, sending shockwaves through the hall. It was clear that whatever they had become, their thirst for dominance hadn't faded. They wanted control, not just of the country, but of the very souls trapped within the debate hall. As the creatures raged on, Sarah spotted something strange near the pit of fire that had opened earlier. A faint glow, different from the hellish flames. She squinted, her heart racing as she realized it was a symbol, etched into the floor. It looked ancient, a sigil of some kind, and it pulsed with a strange energy. "That symbol," she muttered to herself. "It might be our way out." She signaled to the others, pointing towards the glowing mark. "That's our escape. We need to get to it." The survivors hesitated, but the growing chaos around them left little choice. They darted from their hiding spot, racing across the hall as creatures lunged at them from the shadows. One by one they fell, screams of terror and anguish filling the air as the demonic beings tore into them. But Sarah kept running, her eyes fixed on the glowing sigil. Just as she reached the edge of the symbol, a massive shadow loomed over her. It was Trump, or what had once been him. His monstrous form reared up, ready to strike her down with his venomous claws. In that moment, Sarah did the only thing she could think of. She stepped into the symbol and screamed, "Release us!" A blinding light erupted from the floor, sending Trump and Biden flying back, their monstrous forms disintegrating in the intense glow. The creatures howled as the light expanded, consuming the hall and purging the darkness. Sarah fell to her knees, gasping for breath as the light began to fade. When she opened her eyes, the hall was empty. The twisted horrors had vanished, and the stage was now just an ordinary debate platform. There were no bodies, no creature, only silence. She stood up, her legs shaking. The world outside the hall seemed eerily normal. The sun had risen, casting a warm glow over the city. The nightmare was over. But as she walked out into the daylight, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The debate of the damned was over, but its scars would linger. Somewhere in the shadows of politics and power, the horrors still waited, biding their time. And Sarah knew that the true nightmare was only just beginning.